Good evening and welcome to the COVID-19 update on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. First, the highlights. 74th World Health Assembly approves resolution on special session to consider developing a pandemic treaty and the implementation of international health regulations. Governors of Abia, Kaduna and Plateau states receive second dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, flagging off the second phase in their states. And scientists warns that there are signs the UK is in the early stages of a third wave of coronavirus infection, says ending COVID restrictions in England on the 21st of June should be postponed. And it's day 7 of the 74th World Health Assembly taking place virtually in light of the coronavirus pandemic. And today, the Assembly has approved a resolution on the strengthening of the World Health Organization preparedness for and response to health emergencies. Not just that, a decision on special session of the Health Assembly to consider developing a pandemic treaty and decision on the implementation of the international health regulations. This is coming as member states discuss priorities and next solutions on vital issues for global public health. In the meantime, while the global cases of the coronavirus slows down in some places and picks up in others, last night new cases in Nigeria were reported from only 3 states, Lagos, Rivers and Kwara State. The nation's commercial center, Lagos, has recorded over 50,000 confirmed coronavirus cases with 439 deaths, while Rivers in the South is currently managing 86 people on admission. Kwara State in the North Central region has almost recorded 3,200 cases, having discharged over 3,068 people. So far, these 3 states make up less than 2,000 cases of the total 7,686 cases on admission.
In continuation of a trend of a low count of daily infections recorded in the month of May, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has confirmed 30 new cases from 3 states in the last 24 hours. According to the breakdown, Lagos had the highest figures with 26 new cases, followed by Rivers and Kwara State with 3 and 1, respectively. The update includes 0 cases from the FCT, Imo, Kaduna, Kano, Nasarawa, Ogun, Ondo, Osun, Oyo, and Sokoto states. The latest tally raises the total number of confirmed cases in Nigeria to 166,315. 1 person has been discharged in the last 24 hours, increasing the number of recoveries to 156,558. There were no casualties since the last 24 hours, leaving the fatality toll at 2,071. Over 1.9 million eligible Nigerians have been vaccinated with the first dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, while 58,938 of those vaccinated with the first dose have now received their second dose. In the latest update by the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Benue State is taking the lead after administering over 10,000 jabs so far, followed closely by Katsina State. According to the health authorities in Nigeria, the protection of health workers remains a priority. They are now implementing a distribution of personal protective equipment to primary health care centers across 774 local government areas in the country. In Africa, 15 countries have reported not more than 10,000 cases, while 30 countries have recorded between 10,000 to 100,000 cases. More than 100 cases have been reported from 7 countries, including Nigeria, while 2 countries have recorded over 500,000 cases, including South Africa, which has the highest figures of infections on the continent. Globally, the number of confirmed cases stands at more than 170 million, while the fatality toll has surpassed 3.5 million deaths.
In the meantime, the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency has listed the sites for the second jab vaccinations across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. The agency insists that the vaccines are safe and the most effective way to prevent against infectious diseases. And while more states have commenced the COVID-19 second dose vaccination, the state governors have led the way. In Abia State, Governor Okezie Ikpeazu received his second dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine after taking the first one in March. And also today, his Kaduna State counterpart, Governor Nasir El-Rufai, received his second jab at his residence, officially kicking off the state's campaign to administer the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccines for persons who took their first doses earlier in March this year. Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State received the second jab of the COVID-19 Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. The governor, alongside his wife, Regina Lalong, and top government functionaries took the jabs at the government house, administered by the governor's personal physician. The executive secretary of the Plateau State Primary Healthcare Board, Dr. Levinus Maikwap, explains new innovations such as the creation of super sites across the 17 local government areas to smoothen the process of citizens' vaccination.
On the 15th of March, we all gathered in Government House that to review with the first dose of the vaccine. And since after then, if you notice in the text that was sent to most of you, it was 12 weeks after the first dose that you're supposed to receive the second dose. But between that time and now, a lot of things have evolved. And the new information is that between 6 to 12 weeks, we can receive the second dose of the vaccine. From last week, 24th, they said we should stop first dose, but the latest information we're having now, for the few doses that we have left, we're still going to continue the first dose concurrently with the second dose, because we're expecting some doses of the vaccine again. So there's no need to say, no, this is expiring, because this one is expiring on the 28th of June. There's no need for that. Now for those that will collect the first dose, that's the remaining about 7,000 doses are left to complete this. They are going to continue receiving it, and if they continue receiving it, they will be rest assured that by 12 weeks, we're expecting another set of vaccines.
In Lagos, the state government is working closely with the Federal Airport Authority and agencies to ease passengers' journey by modifying the Lagos State booking platform to provide several hotels accredited by the state government for passengers arriving from India, Brazil or Turkey. The state's medical personnel have also been posted to these hotels to support the management of passengers of interest in situations that they might need some medical care. Now, according to the Health Minister, there's the Health Commissioner in Lagos, since the commencement of the new guidelines and the ban on non-Nigerians travelling from the three countries into Nigeria, Lagos State has recorded 568 inbound passengers who have been permitted to enter Nigeria from these three countries. And while the government has isolated 433 passengers, 262 are in isolation and 154 passengers have been discharged with a negative COVID-19 test. Now, out of that number, 9 tested positive to the virus and were successfully isolated to prevent community transmission. But the remaining 135 passengers, 119 have refused isolation and 16 are unaccounted for. Well, for more on this, Honorable Abdurrahman Tarab is the head of technology transfer and innovation at the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, NIDCOM. He joins us now from our Abuja studios. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, when you hear people absconding from isolation, refusing isolation and quarantine, what really comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is, in the first place, how is that possible? Because you've just made mention of the fact that isolation centers have been provided. And of course, it should be expected that inbound passengers from especially these countries that are recently having very dangerous waves should be isolated in a facility that is provided, and of course for which they have already signed to. And I think if that is the case, then of course it does appear that there is a lot of people can actually escape the system, and that can be quite worrisome, especially if they are coming from some of these disturbing countries.
Indeed, quite a big risk. But in terms of technology, is there a better way to do this, preventing this kind of situation where some Nigerians are unaccounted for?
Interestingly, the guidelines that have been provided by the NCDC, and of course, and recently readopted by the task force, is quite clear because except if that has been jettisoned, ordinarily everybody expects that at the point of entry, one of the major things that you're expected to do is to surrender your passport. And then, of course, which means you will eventually be, you have to give also, while surrendering your passport, you have to provide all of your details, and which means you can be tracked. But I think most importantly, the Lagos State initiative is the way to go. There should be, the government must actually take that responsibility of ensuring that there are certain facilities that can provide isolation accommodation for inbound passengers, because that is the only way, so long as you are now recording cases where people are escaping the system. So it means you cannot continue like that. The only way to do it is to ensure that you have a facility for which, if people choose, they can have 3 or 4 classes of facility which they can be able to afford, and then ensure that there is a managed quarantine and supervised quarantine. If you don't have that, if you start to get into technology deeply, we might start to get into issues of privacy and other issues, which to me at the moment, the time frame, the time frame that will not provide for such at the moment. So the easiest way to go about it is to ensure that there is a facility that is managed and supervised, and people will have to undergo that. And in a situation where the authorities will have to allow anybody to make way home or get his own facility, I think there should be some more stringent rules guiding that.
Finally, before we let you go, is there a role that NEDCOM is playing in this, especially in education? You know, how is the Commission helping to untie some of these bottlenecks?
I think what the Commission has done very well in the past with regards to educating members of the diaspora, specifically on the do's and don'ts. We have, we have hosted a lot of virtual meetings with members of the CDC, with the Presidential Task Force, and with members of the diaspora in order to educate them and ensure that they get the message very well on the requirements. And I want to believe that, sincerely speaking, to a large extent, if you go through the records, the compliance rate from members of the diaspora is very, very high, and I believe it's quite impressive.
We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Honorable Abdurrahman Tarab, Head of Technology Transfer and Innovation at NEDCOM. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Still to come, the United States is making progress in stamping out coronavirus out of the country. Find out how in a moment. Welcome back. The United States remains hopeful for the future as the coronavirus cases and deaths continue to fall. As the country begins to fully reopen, vaccinations are ongoing. Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, has the latest.
The number of COVID-19 cases in the United States continues to plummet. Daily rates are about 23,000 new infections per day, the fewest in nearly a year. Half of all Americans have started the vaccination process, and 40% are fully vaccinated. But the number of doses administered each day has fallen by 50% since its peak in April.
More than 165 million Americans so far have done their patriotic duty, 165 million, and gotten at least one shot. Now, 51% of American adults have been fully vaccinated. 75% of seniors fully vaccinated. We aren't just saving lives, we're getting our lives back. Stores and restaurants up and down Main Street are hanging open signs on their front doors. And here in the rock climbing gym, we're greeted by another, and we're greeting one another with smiles with our masks off.
Death rates have also decreased, as the U.S. 7-day average is 656 deaths, a sharp decline from the death averages of over 3,000 in January of 2021. While the U.S. is making major strides in its work toward ending the pandemic, the U.S. president has initiated a review panel to investigate the beginning of the pandemic.
It's imperative that we get to the bottom of just where the pandemic originated, not just for the purposes of understanding this pandemic, but the pandemics to come.
I understand why we want it to get done, but why do we think that China would cooperate?
You know, this is something that you have to ask the Chinese government, right? This is something that should be important. It should matter to them, but this is a question for them.
This announcement has been met with opposition from China and has intensified the challenged relationship between U.S. and China. The U.S. has put major efforts into curbing the spread of the virus, and it now calls to question the origins of the virus. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channels Television News.
Well, joining us for more on this, Dr. David Ajibade is a public health physician and CEO of Brain and Body Foundation. He joins us from Maryland in the U.S. Good to have you on the program. First, let's get your thoughts, on the U.S. president's decision ordering an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. What do you make of it?
Well, for sure, Millicent, this is a highly politicized event, an issue, and of course there are several years and years on either side. However, the US has finally decided to come around to really doing their own separate investigation because of two main things, in my opinion, and I think these are very valid. One is the fact that the Wuhan lab was very close to the wet market, which everybody is claiming that's where it started. The whole coronavirus theory started. Number two is that there have been about 3 scientists who came down. This is an U.S. intelligence report now, who came down with the virus and with the disease prior to everybody hearing about it. And this is the United States intelligence report. So this is now being circulated. And so the White House has decided that this is something that they have to look into, separate from the independent WHO's investigation, which was done a few months back, which they said there was no such thing as a lab leak. That's what they call it, a lab leak hypothesis. I think it's good. I think every single possible theory has to be investigated fully because the whole world, as you know, came to a grinding halt. No one is blaming China outright. Well, some people are. But we need to find out what exactly happened because a lot of people have suffered, a lot of countries have been destroyed, a lot of companies and lives have been destroyed. So it just makes sense that they investigate and find out really what actually happened.
But looking at Mr. Biden's body language, is it any different from former President Trump, who blamed the WHO for its slow response and sort of blamed China for the outbreak?
Well, obviously, President Biden is a lot more diplomatic and is a lot more inclusive. He wants everybody to get along. But now that he's taking this stance, he's going to eventually have to draw a hard line because if the results show that it actually came out of China, the lab where they were doing experiments, then there will be consequences, obviously. Even if the US doesn't take it, the rest of the world will begin to point fingers and try and do something. So he's going to have to take a hard stance. He can't continue to be a jolly good fellow and nice to everyone. He might have to make some hard decisions if the results come out that it actually came out from the lab.
Looking at America, are they getting back on track? I mean, we're seeing reports that cases are falling, also deaths, and this is following the rapid vaccinations and seeing as the holidays are also in full gear.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what was the question?
How is America getting back on track in terms of the rapid vaccinations? And tell us more, especially we understand that for the vaccinations, which are becoming quite rapid, there are certain incentives.
Yes. So obviously people are very anxious to get back on the road, and America is a very outdoorsy kind of environment. Everybody wants to go for summer trips to the forests, to the hills. So a lot of people are coming out. Now, they're still being encouraged to wear masks, even though you're vaccinated. So that's a little politicized as well. Now, what is also a controversy is, of course, the incentives like you just mentioned. A lot of people are willing to get the incentives, the financial incentives, unemployment. A lot of people are claiming unemployment. And so they are not getting back to work, and there's not that push to get back to work. And I know of certain businesses, personal friends of mine, who are looking. They've been sending out notices. We want more. These job notices are available. These jobs are available. People are not coming to that because the claim is that, and this is not confirmed, but the claim is that people are enjoying the incentives so much that they don't see any need to drive to work anymore. And so they would rather just sit home at home and enjoy the incentives. So that's a bit of a problem, and it's causing a lot of concern between both sides. So there's a lot of drama happening here, Millicent, I got to tell you.
All right, we appreciate your time always on the show. Thank you, Dr. David Ajibade, Public Health Physician, CEO, Brain and Body Foundation. Glad to have you join us.
Thank you.
South Africa is increasing its COVID-19 restrictions to try and fight a surge in recent infections. A nightly curfew is to be extended, meaning non-essential shops, bars and restaurants will be forced to close by 10 p.m. President Cyril Ramaphosa says further restrictions are necessary to ensure that health facilities are not overwhelmed. South Africa has recorded more than 56,000 deaths and more than 1.5 million more than any other African nation.
While the country is headed towards a third wave of infections, we do not yet know how severe this wave will be or for how long it will last. According to the scientists that advise government, the severity of this third wave will largely be determined by the amount of contact each of us has with other people. This means that each of us needs to think about all the people we come into contact with each day and do everything we can to limit those contacts. Sometimes it is unavoidable to be in contact with other people, as we are all human beings. Contact that happens at work or when we go shopping or where we are in public transport. In such cases, it is important that we strictly observe all the health protocols by wearing a mask, keeping our distance from others, and ensuring proper ventilation.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa there. Over in the UK, there might be signs that they are in the early stages of a third wave of coronavirus infections, according to a scientist advising the government. Professor Ravi Gupta from the University of Cambridge says that although new cases are relatively low, the Indian variant had caused exponential growth. He says ending COVID restrictions in England on June 21 should be postponed. British Vaccines Minister Nadeem Zahawi also says the government cannot rule out a delay in the planned lockdown easing. Well, let's continue to take responsibility. You can visit our website. It's channelstv.com for more updates, also a better understanding of the pandemic. You can find several other stories, breaking news on politics, business and sports. It's all at your fingertips, channelstv.com. Thank you for watching the program this evening. I'm Millicent Walker. Stay safe.